Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come experience the beauty that awaits in Scotland. The sweep of wild coastlines, quiet lochs, and untamed landscapes. Fresh cuisine that feels rooted in the land. Come experience the kind of stillness that stays with you long after you leave. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi! Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Good morning. This is Mike Stoller for the Stoller Real Estate Report. What's happening in Brooklyn? It's a place of the 5 boroughs that has seen most of the activity next to Manhattan. It's a place where people want to live, work, shop, go to hotels, go to Coney Island. It's a place that everybody's looking forward to being there. So today I have an individual who is exclusively involved in the real estate and the investment sales in Brooklyn. I have Dan Marks, who's the CEO of TerraCRG, also known as the only Brooklyn people around. Thanks. So how's the guy from Chicago become a Brooklynite?
Well, you spend enough time here, you get to know it. I remember when I first moved to Brooklyn. First of all, before we get started, Mike, I just want to say it's such an honor to be on your radio show and getting to know you over the years. I appreciate you having me back on. But, you know, like anything else, you spend enough time somewhere, you get to know it. And I've been now in the Brooklyn market for 15 years. And when you just focus on one market, you really get to know it inside and out. And that's really our motto at TerraCRG, is really focusing only on the Brooklyn market. So, you know, we have to pay attention to everything that's going on in the investment sales world and what's impacting the investment sales on a day-to-day basis.
So what's happening today? The quarter is over. Mm-hmm. It's been a good quarter, correct?
It's been a great quarter. We just released our first quarter market report, and all metrics are up. So I think what's interesting here is this. The first quarter was $2.2 billion in total dollar volume. If you remember back in 2010, the entire year in Brooklyn was a $1 billion market. This quarter alone, we'd more than doubled that. There's only been 10 quarters over $2 billion since 2016. So we are trending ahead of our 10-year average, both in dollar volume and transaction volume. And that's a really positive sign. So I think it's safe to say that Brooklyn continues to be an extremely hot market, and it's doing very well from a commercial side.
Specifically, which assets classes are doing well?
It's obviously very nuanced, right? So, there's a lot of development that's happening in Brooklyn, thousands and thousands of units, like you mentioned in the intro. Outside of Manhattan, there's more development happening in Brooklyn than anywhere else in the city. So development continues to boom.
Is it due to the city of Yes?
I think that has something to do with it. I think that gave a sort of a noticeable boost, but it's really more about the 485X passing, which was, for those of you who don't know or are listening, that's a tax incentive program that Albany passed a few years ago that gave people an incentive to build if you build affordable housing units. But that program has its own problems. So in Brooklyn...
Which are the problems? The 99 units?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're paying attention to this market, you realize most development sites are less than 99 units. That's because if you build over 99 units, there's a prevailing wage requirement. And once you add that to your spreadsheets, it really throws your construction costs really out of whack. And you have a hard time buying property at the land values that they're selling at. And so that provision alone is really limiting the amount of development that people can do on a larger scale. You'll see large sites sell, and then you'll see 2 or 3 99-unit buildings pop up on that site. It's totally inefficient, and they even leave some air rights on the table sometimes to avoid that requirement. So most developers are always looking for those loopholes. When new incentives come out, we saw it with the old 421A program. We saw it with Affordable New York. Developers are going to do what's best, and the market's going to do what's best for their projects. And so, but with that said, Brooklyn is still a small to mid-sized development market by and large, and we're seeing the small and mid-sized development projects do very well. So
we started with Williamsburg, then we went to Greenpoint, then we went to Gowanus. So which is the next area we're going? I
mean, take your pick. Every neighborhood has its own level of booming that's happening. I would say that Crown Heights is probably the next major market to keep a very close eye on.
Why Crown Heights?
So the city council passed a rezoning called AMUP. That was the Atlantic Avenue mixed use rezoning that happened that extends basically from near the Barclays Center along Atlantic Avenue, hugging Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights, and then extends a little bit further down into Crown Heights, just south of Atlantic Avenue. And That is going to be Gowanus 2.0. If you go into Gowanus right now,
What is Gowanus 2.1? Or
1.0?
What 1.0?
Gowanus 1.0, if you haven't had a chance to get there and you're active in this market, you just want to see what a massive neighborhood development change happening all at once, go walk that neighborhood. It is absolutely shocking. When I started focusing on Gowanus, 15 years ago, it was all low-rise warehouses. Now, just in the last 2 years, the amount of housing, there's been 1,500 units already delivered just in the past 2 years. There's another couple thousand already in the pipeline right now.
Mostly rental or mostly combination of rental and condominiums?
Almost all rental. And that's because in these rezoned areas, it's mandatory inclusionary housing, which is another way of saying you have to build affordable housing. And it's really hard.
On-site or off-site?
It's all on-site. It's all on-site mixed in with the units, same lobbies, same amenities, same everything.
And what percentage has to be affordable?
Generally 20%. So 80-20, but then there's different affordability requirements depending on what you're looking to do. So the city of Yes did allow for additional density in these projects. You just have to make the units even a little bit more affordable. So, but the Gowanus is, most of those projects are being done under the previous tax abatement program, not under 485X.
Okay, what about Red Hook?
I mean, Red Hook is interesting because you have the Brooklyn Marine Terminal project, which is in the Columbia waterfront Red Hook border. It depends how you're defining that neighborhood. But for many years, Red Hook was really the industrial development boom along the waterfront. The EDC recognized under Andrew Kimball's leadership and Mayor Adams' administration that this massive piece of property along the Brooklyn waterfront that is totally underdeveloped and not really being utilized for its intended purposes that it was used for all those years. So now that project just cleared the vision plan approval back in September of 2025. If that project goes through as they've discussed, that will provide over 6,000 housing units, 40% will be affordable, hundreds of thousands of commercial, open park space. I think an absolute huge win for New York City. Of course, there's always going to be, NIMBYs who are not interested in that kind of development happening there. But the city needs a lot of housing. This is a really easy way to do it. The question is, who's going to be in charge of EDC next? Because I don't think anyone's been named to fill Andrew's position. And we're very early in the new mayor's administration. So it's hard to say where this is going to go. It's currently in environmental review. So we're still a few years away from that project really taking shape. But I think it's one of the most dynamic development potential sites in all of New York City. Okay,
what about Greenpoint?
Greenpoint, the Greenpoint waterfront is a direct extension of what's been happening along Williamsburg. Williamsburg waterfront continues to develop. Park Tower Group has continued to develop up there. Some new major developers have been purchasing large properties there on the water as well. So that continues.
What about retail development?
There's not as much sort of pure retail development. Retail does very well in Brooklyn because there's still 2.7 million people, within that 70 square mile radius. And so there's a real need for street level retail. Downtown Brooklyn retail tends to do very well. And Williamsburg, especially, North 6th and Bedford and that pocket right there, that's probably the hottest, if not, it's definitely the hottest retail corridor in Brooklyn, if not one of the hottest markets in all of New York City. You have Empire Realty Trust, buying up properties there. Acadia, some major institutions have made some huge bets in that corridor over the last 2 years.
Okay, what about my favorite topic, which we always talk about, Coney Island?
Yeah. So my team's been lucky enough we're working on a large 400,000 square foot development site in Coney Island, right near the baseball stadium right there. And we're close to finalizing a deal there with a developer. That's going to be a residential development site.
How many units?
Hard to say. 400,000 square feet is going to be a lot of units. It depends. Again, we have 485X requirements, so I'm not exactly sure what they'll end up putting there, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units there can go there.
What about industrial?
I mean, industrial was the hottest asset class in the city post-pandemic for a few years. People just couldn't get enough of it. They wanted to manufacture and store and distribute in dense urban areas. And so, our team was fortunate enough to work on a huge 10-acre deal on behalf of ExxonMobil. That was a $120 million deal we sold a couple of years ago. That was really the last big industrial deal that traded in Brooklyn. There just aren't that many left.
What about self-storage?
Self-storage really hasn't been newly developed since the de Blasio administration passed rules that you need to get a special permit to build new self-storage, and they took away tax incentives. So you weren't even eligible for ICAP tax incentives. You're going to do self-storage. The same sort of thing happened with hotel. So you really lost the ability to build any new self-storage or any new hotels since those changes happened citywide. But we're focused on the Brooklyn market. That stuff just hasn't happened. The other thing I just want to add about Coney Island, Mike, is the downstate casino license was not awarded to the Coney Island market. And the last time I was here last April, I was advocating for it, and I thought it was just it's America's playground. It's the best location for gaming and a good spot for it. And unfortunately, they just didn't win. They just didn't win approval there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's a lot of property down there that was going to go in that direction that isn't. So I think that's something to pay attention to as we move forward into this year.
So what's the best market for the emerging 2026-27 in Brooklyn?
We talked about it earlier. This Crown Heights rezoning, I think, is going to be transformative. I think there's still a lot of property owners still learning about what this rezoning means, and it should unlock some new development opportunities. With that will come a lot of housing. Following that will come a lot of retail, and that neighborhood is really going to change dramatically.
What about Midwood?
I mean, Midwood continues to be a very strong residential market. There's a lot of major real estate players that own in that neighborhood, but it's very, very insular, very community driven. That part of Brooklyn is almost more suburban than it is urban.
Okay, last question. What about East New York?
East New York, again, thanks to the rezoning, is continuing to get new development, mostly affordable housing development. My partner Ofer Cohen and his team over at Atlantis just got a huge rezoning passed over by Broadway Junction. That's going to bring a massive amount of housing and an office and commercial over there. So I think the key here is that you'll notice the neighborhoods that we've been talking about all went through major rezonings. When the city steps in and they recognize the need, the private developers and the private money comes in and the people come in. You build it, they will fill it. That we've seen that time and time again in Brooklyn. I've been in this market 15 years, and every year it seems like more and more development is happening. There's just not enough.
And I'd like to thank Dan Marks for being here today.
Thank you, Mike.